and here's why. Year over year, we didn't have that great of a change in violent crime and property crime, et cetera, but we had a 67% increase in juvenile arrests. And that came at the same exact time as the Trump Justice Department took off the federal oversight of our juvenile court. I find that very interesting, and criminal justice equity isn't just for adults, it's also for our youth. And the school to prison pipeline is a big function of differing outcomes in education.
Frank?
Thank you. Let's clear up the record. Police have gotten a raise in 3 of the last 4 budgets. I voted on them, I know they were there. Fire got 3 of the last 4 budgets. As a matter of fact, they got 2 raises in only 1 year. Pre-K, I think we voted on that help, was that 2 years ago? And we're going to have it fully funded, I want to say beginning in a year. So a lot of these ideas have been voted on and approved, and we're working on the funding. That being said, let's talk about education. I'm open to any and all ideas. I feel like Memphis really does have $1 billion worth of issues and $700 million to go around. We have to increase our revenue to handle these issues. With the money we have, though, we found additional funds to keep our libraries open longer. Right, so our kids have a longer place to go. We have structured play in our parks now that we haven't had in years. So that, coupled with the normal improvements we make to our community centers and parks for sports and play, we found all that within a balanced budget. I go back, though, to thinking, you can't think of just the last 4 years, think of the next 4 and set the pace for the next decade. Trade schools. Not every young man or young woman is going to go to college. Like I said, somebody might decide they want to get into construction or landscaping. You know, their high school guidance counselor may tell them to go dig ditches for a living. I took him literally in that case. That was a joke, guys. Come on. Nobody laughed. Okay, fine. But the trade schools are the next level of opportunity. Okay, we're funding the pre-K through 3 to give our kids the chance at an early start. As they develop and go forward and graduate from high school, not all of them are going to go to college. So they can go to trade school and specifically aim at what they want to do. But it speaks also in the broader terms of education. What is our long-term goal? What's the point of educating our children if they're just going to go to Nashville or LA or New York? We have to create jobs, and not just jobs, good jobs. And I mean really good jobs. $15 an hour is just a start. That is where our proposal for development must go as we build up and not out. We have to have the jobs. Once they get the education, they come back here. They don't go anywhere else. Thank you.
I have a question on leadership and governance. As council members and as a council body, you oversee with the mayor, a fairly big budget. You also oversee a variety of parks and golf courses, lots of employees. It is a tremendous platform from which to exert your leadership. What would be your personal leadership style if you were in office? How would you use your leadership gravitas to change things, your leadership influence? John, we'll start with you on this one.
I won't lie, I'm halfway tempted to say a policy of total opposition, but I realize that that is the rabble-rouser and the protester in me, and not the level-headed policy wonk, as it were. Look, I know that ideologically, philosophically, I'm quite different from many people who are currently on the council, many people who run for council. I get that, again, I'm working from a different set of presuppositions, as I said earlier. With that, though, I look to a personal hero of mine, one Bernard Sanders. Bernie Sanders is, quite frankly, the reason why I joined the DSA in the first place, why I've engaged in this path of activism that I have. I was an anti-war activist around the time of 9/11. Sort of let that fall to the side as I became an adult, got on with life, etc. But I'm back in the game, as it were, because we're at kind of a tipping point. So, look at Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has not compromised ideologically one bit, but yet he's done things like work with the late John McCain on veterans benefits. Some may think that because I'm a socialist, I don't like the police, but I am a big fan of the police getting their pensions back. We made a promise, they collectively bargained for it, we should honor it. And so I have the feeling that at the end of the day, ideology aside, mindsets aside, we all want to live in a safe, nice, prosperous city. And if we operate with that as our end goal, I think that we'll find a surprising amount of common ground.
Right.
Thank you. I think at the first things first, we're going to be very involved in the crime issue, especially our police and our first responders. I think that continuous pay increases, continuous benefits questions, but also remember, as we're adding police officers, we're going to be increasing our cost for more police cars. I didn't realize we actually have to buy 90 new police cars every year for the wear and tear. So I think the first thing we have to look at is what Director Rawlings wants and needs to do his job, and then get it to him. I think what we have to do is look at what Director Sweat wants to do with fire and get her what she needs to do. I think the next thing is I look at development in terms of not just growing Memphis up and not out, but I guess we've said, I think this is vital for Memphis's future, is growing the minority business community. I think that the opportunities that we can potentially create for participation and forward momentum, at some point there's such competition that everybody is going to win. I think government's fundamental belief is a balanced budget, and we keep our taxes as low as we can about providing the most efficient service. If we're not providing efficient service, we go in, we make the cuts, we find what we have to do to stretch your dollars as far as possible. I personally think that your money, you know best what to do with your money. And that's the way I approach government. That's the way literally I approach government. So I look forward to working with the police, working with first responders, working with development, seeing what we can potentially do more in education, but also looking at our neighborhoods and expanding those sorts of things. But going back to it, remember, you have 700 million, the county has over $1 billion, okay? We have only so much money that we have to grow our infrastructure, we have to literally repair our infrastructure, but grow in order to cover our expenses. So my goal the next 4 years, and something that very near and dear, I think we're gonna have to look at our infrastructure, because the city controls and owns MLG&W. So all the rate increases fall on the council. I don't know if everybody knows that. I really can't tell them often enough. We have to take a long look at that infrastructure and how we're going to pay it before we arbitrarily just say, hey, we're going to throw that on citizens. Is MLG&W being the most efficient? Are they stretching our dollars as far as they can? Do they have the right vendors? Are we getting the best value? I think we also look at MATA, and I really think that those are the two primary issues that are going to really crop up in the next year. Everybody wants to throw money at MATA. Okay, I get it. But are they being the most efficient? Have you seen their spaghetti routes? How many times have you seen the buses empty? I think that a long look is coming on MATA now that as things come into play and they're needing more and more money. It's, are we getting bang for the buck? Are we getting our workers and our neighbors to the grocery store and to their jobs? At the end of the day, I think MATA has a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do with them and on our infrastructure. So I think that's where I see my leadership going.
Ted, any other questions for you?
Do I get to answer that one, Mark?
I'm sorry. My yes.
Thank
I'm
you.
saving the best for last.
Awesome.
There we
I
go.
appreciate that.
I'm sorry about that.
No worries. My leadership style is balanced. I think what we heard, even though it's a nonpartisan race, is a lot of red influences and a lot of very blue influences. And coming out of the corporate arena, 20 plus years in corporate America, Fortune 50 companies, two of the greatest companies in the world, in my opinion, FedEx and AutoZone. You learn how to build from very little. The stories of FedEx and AutoZone's creation start off with very little. Those innovators, those giants really led the way on how to build a better business, really by bootstrapping, hard work, and being very smart in your decision making. So that's really the type of philosophy I take as a leader. I'm also one that's It's not really just sitting behind the desk and whipping the pen. We gotta get out there. We gotta get on those trash cans, those trash trucks, and see what they're going through to find out where those inefficiencies are. We gotta get on police rides. We gotta be in the cruisers with those officers to see what they're seeing, to try to help them improve what they're having. It's not good enough to ask the questions anymore. We've asked enough questions. It's time to act. Part of my philosophy, and I use this in my profession, is plan, do, check, and act. You gotta have those steps. There is a procurement process that we have that no citizen understands. We've got to figure out why we're making these purchases and not going through enough vendors to make sure that we have the best product for our citizens and our taxpayer dollars. Again, with police and fire, trash and MLGW, I agree, Frank, we got to look at it, definitely. But I don't need to look at it. When I wake up in the morning, my power's out, but I look at my MLGW bill and it's paid, I got a problem with that. Our infrastructure is crumbling. And so we definitely need to make sure that that operation is running extremely efficient. A new CEO was hired a few years ago. We got to make sure we listen to his plan, but he also has to be held accountable for making sure taxpayer dollars are being allocated properly. If we're buying new police cruisers, do we need to stick with the Chargers? Are there better vehicles out there for the police? I think if we listen to them and Director Rollins will hear, maybe there's some things that we can do instead of just trying to build up fleets to police pockets or to keep things easy. I'm not sure what the decision-making process is, and neither do our citizens. But we need to have transparent government. My style is making sure that we are open and honest with our citizens and that we allow them to be a part of the process.
Say anything else from you?
No, that's fine.
I have a final question. It's going to start with Mr. White for the answer and move down the way.
Is this our closing?
It is your closing.
Okay, cool.
Yes, and I'm going to start with Mr. White on closing.
Sure.
And I'll repeat the question from what I mentioned earlier. It is, what have you learned about yourself and your city throughout this campaign?
Well, first of all, thanks again for the opportunity. I've learned so much about myself, and I have confirmed so much about this city. Memphis is such a wonderful place. It's one of those tough places, but if you hug it, it will hug you back. But you can't hug it from a distance. You have to get there and touch the people. I've learned so much about myself and my willingness to be committed to the city as a big brother and big sister, mentor. I've got a 10-year-old little boy looking up to me who lost his dad to cancer when he was a little boy, who has nobody else to look up to. I need to be there for him. I need to be there for my son, who's 15 years old and trying to make a decision about college and what he's gonna do. I need to be there for my daughter and my wife. I need to make sure that they're protected as they move around this city. I need to make sure that they know that they have someone in a position of power and influence in the city council that can help make decisions to solidify not only their future, but the future of other people that had similar stories to me. I'm not unique. I'm just a guy that worked hard, that had a family that loved me and cared for me, and that we made it to a position of comfort. But are we safe? Are we where we need to be? Absolutely not. And that's where Memphis is. And if we take our eyes off the ball and keep asking questions and not taking action, Memphis will fall back. Is Memphis moving in the right direction? I believe so. But it's moving so slow where cities that used to be our little brothers, to bring up the old Miss, that's a joke. Guys.
Go Tigers.
There you go, Tigers.
Go Tigers.
They used to be our little brothers. They're now outpacing us, right? When 20 years ago, Memphis used to be thought to be on pace with Atlanta and Dallas. And now people are moving out. I remember I just read an article that the owner of the Crescent building is leaving because Memphis is no longer vibrant. That hurts my feelings. And we have to do something as a government to change the narrative. That is why I'm running. That is why I want to be the next city councilman for District 2. And I believe I can be in a position to take action now and not continue to just ask questions.
John?
Well, I'll start by saying this. A lot of modern life is meant to alienate us from other people. I get up in the morning, I leave my box, I get into a smaller box, my car, I drive to another box, my office, I sit in a box, my cubicle, and then I go to other boxes, people's offices, and then I come home to my box. The whole time I have a screen that is supposedly connecting me with the rest of the world, but it is in turn mediating most of my experience. I am a subject kind of asunder, by myself, alone. And one of the interesting things that happened to me, and this was a long time ago, this is before I even had any inkling of even attempting to run for public office, was I started talking to people about how I felt about the world. How I thought, maybe things should be different. Maybe we could have an economy that serves human beings instead of human beings serving an economy, things like that. And I was astounded by how many people I've met and become instant friends with because we commiserated over the state of the world. The state of the world right now is designed to isolate people. I didn't know my neighbors before I started this campaign, I'll shamefully admit. I didn't know the guy who lived behind me. I know the guy who lived across from me. We'd wave to each other, we were friendly, we were neighbors. But he went in his box and I went in mine, and that was the end of it. I've been really, really astonished at the outpouring of support I've gotten from people. In a situation where I honestly didn't expect any support whatsoever. I was mostly doing this to make a point. But at the end of the day, people have given me their hard-earned money, their time, their influence.
Energizing.
And I've been really shocked. One, how people have come out, but two, why they've come out. People I've never met before hear the angle I'm taking toward things and what I want to do. And they're instantly in support of me. And that piece of it tells me that there's something wrong with the way the city is operating. We're leaving too many people behind. We're not building ourselves. And when we do build things, it's usually in the service of some big bank or private developer who is going to, like the Crescent Center, take the money and run. The Crescent Center isn't leaving because Memphis isn't vibrant. The Crescent Center is leaving because they can find properties where they can charge more rent elsewhere. It's a business. They're in business. Now, if you think the city should be run like a business, well, you've got a candidate. If you think that business is the be-all and end-all of things, well, you've got a candidate there too. But if you're like me and you see business as isolating you, as slowly destroying the planet you live on, as causing all kinds of human suffering and anguish, and you think maybe we should do something to mitigate that, well, hey, you got some choices to make.
The last response, of course, is from Frank, and we're almost out of this queue, by the way. Almost. That was a joke.
Ha!
We caught it.
Do we get the endorsement? Ha ha! I laugh first.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Frank. Go ahead.
I have zero comedic timing. You guys should know that by now. First things, thanks guys for having this, and thank you to the candidates. I think this is truly the arena of ideas. What do you want to do, and what do you want to achieve? You asked me what I've learned, especially in the last 4 years. My great-grandfather started the business. I grew up in it. I signed the front of the paychecks, and this week I met a $65,000 payroll. I'm just a little landscaping company, and I have to meet that payroll every week, and I have to meet my sales targets every month and quarter. I have to keep my costs as low as I possibly can. Now, whether you're just a little $4 or $5 million landscape company, or you're a $700 million budget, you spend all your money, you're still just as broke. So I use that basis every day when I go to council, when everybody presents something to me, whether it's MLG&W or MATA or crime, what we're spending on it, or pay raise, looking at all of these things within the budget. Because at the end of the day, it's your money. Make absolutely no mistake, the way I see it, it's your money. So I'm going to basically stretch it as absolutely far as I can. If you look, Highwoods sold their properties, having seen the development industry for so long. Highwood sold their properties because they're worth a lot more than what they paid for them. And they wanted to move into another market. Simple as that. That's capitalism. That happens. How many great things in Memphis have other cities either copied or borrowed? Our objective is to keep leading the way and building our infrastructure, literally building our city as we are. As we do that, we become worth more. You have a better life. We naturally have a tax revenue increase. So Highlands comes, Highlands go. We wish them the very best. Actually, Steve Wood's a pretty good buddy of mine. Somebody will come in, a good company will come in. I'm sure they'll buy. The Boyle and the Belsons, I'm sure, are probably looking at it as we speak. So you ask me what I've learned, I say that looking at the budget and looking at your money, not just mine, and how I look at Greenscape and how I see those budgets, the same way I see your public dollars. The same way I see how we're going to build everything up by not only enhancing pre-K through third, but moving all the way through to creating the jobs. I don't want John to turn around and go from box to box to box. I want John to turn around and go, my Lord, you know, that Union Road development's all of a sudden, that's got a 20% pay increase. I'm gonna apply for that job. That opportunity is there for him. If you ask me what happens, God willing, at the end of 4 years from now, then we basically doubled our infrastructure, basically development, and our development overall. Then we found even more money as a result of this natural for more pay for police, first responders, and potential enhancements in education. I hope that in 4 years you will turn around and say, Frank, you figured out that matter thing, you led the charge, thank you. That is the objective. I learned that no, you can't wait. You can't ask questions. You can't ask enough questions. You'll be surprised at how you'll get the information. You guys are reporters, you know. You ask enough questions, you'll start to figure out which end is up and you'll be able to make smart action. It's an honor to serve. Thank you.
On that note, thank you very much for your time.
Can we get a picture? Yeah.
Sure.
Can everybody jump in? Let's get a picture.
You want to